Hello everyone. Hi, welcome. I'm so excited for this. Slightly nervous. I feel like you shouldn't always tell everyone about your nerves, but we love being transparent with our anxiety here. It's very fitting for today's episode. Welcome to the pilot episode of It's All in My Headset. It's a new web series exploring the mental health experiences of folks within the gaming world, from content creators who play the games to those who make them in the industry. We are aiming to raise awareness of mental health one level at a time. As one of the clinical board members, we are also partnered with Safe in Our World, which is a mental health charity dedicated to supporting the games industry and wider community. And their mission is to eliminate the stigma surrounding mental health and ensure support can be accessed by those who need it. They support gamers and game developers across the globe with practical tools, training, and resources, which cover burnout, toxicity, self-advocacy, well-being, leadership, and much more. And you can find more about them at safeinourworld.org. So a little bit about me. I mean, some of you guys know me. I was the Shellder for a while, but I'm also Sheila. I'm a therapist outside of Twitch. I specialize in trauma-informed practice, and I work with individuals experiencing a range of mental health difficulties. I conduct mental health and psychological assessments, as well as mental health risk assessment and management. When I was a content creator, you know, I lived, breathed, ate gaming on here, but also since my brother actually plugged in the controller into his PlayStation 1 so I could play Monster Rancher Hop About. Does anyone actually remember that game? Did you? Anyone? It was like a pogo stick game and there was like holes in the floor. That was like the first memory I have of gaming. This episode in itself is not only the exciting start of a new adventure of connection through creatives telling their personal stories of mental health, but one that is really close to me. I have obsessive compulsive disorder. I've had it since about 8 years old. It's one of the main reasons why I became a therapist, and it's a condition that I live with and manage all the time. So you may have heard of OCD, but there's a real misconception around it. You've probably heard, oh, I'm so OCD, I have to have my shelf organized a certain way, like, oh, I get so mad if like my pencils aren't color arranged, which is very, very far from the truth. OCD is an anxiety disorder, and it's characterized by intrusive thoughts or obsessions, which cause extreme distress and anxiety. We develop rituals or compulsions, so things that we have to do in order to dispel the anxiety, but compulsions only tend to reaffirm the avoidance and fear of intrusive thoughts. Everyone gets intrusive thoughts, right? So you're standing at a high place and you have a thought of, I could just yeet myself off of this. I mean, the French actually call this the call of the void. And intrusive thoughts are actually really normal. But the difference is that people with OCD experience disturbing intrusive thoughts that usually go against their moral compass to a distressing degree. And in psychology, when intrusive thoughts go against what we actually want or desire, we call them ego-dystonic. There are different themes around OCD. Harm OCD centers around intrusive thoughts about hurting your loved one. Relationship OCD is intrusive thoughts that you might not love your partner. The list is actually quite extensive. And compulsions, these things that we do to get rid of the thoughts, they can look different for everyone. Rumination is one that I have, which is repetitive thinking. It's problem solving a worry that you can't solve. I wanted to give you a little case study, just so you kind of have a really good understanding of OCD. You're going to be pros by the end of this episode, hopefully. A patient I actually had assessed had been cutting vegetables for dinner one day, and they had an intrusive thought pop into their head. What if I was to lose control and turn this knife on my partner? Now, this was terrifying. They'd never had a thought like this before, and they thought, why would I think this? I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt my partner. Why would that come into my head? I must be a bad person. They began to be terrified of being near knives in case the thought would happen again. And so they would start to hide knives or throw them away. But that meant the next time that they had to use one, the intrusive thoughts and anxiety were even worse. And this is an example of the OCD cycle. OCD is life-altering, and studies have shown that OCD's brains actually exhibit differences to brains without the disorder. And these differences have been observed through brain structure, function, and neurochemistry. But to really understand these differences, you have to speak to us, the individuals living with the disorder. And that's why, I'm so honored to be joined by the lovely streamer, artist, dog sitter, ball of sunshine, but most importantly, a fellow OCD sister and advocate for the disorder, Meru. Welcome
Hi.
To It's All in My
good to be
Headset, the
here.
very first episode. Thank you so much for coming on here. I've been waiting. I think I remember speaking to you about OCD 2 years ago, and we always are like, oh man, we should really do something with this. We should really talk about it. And we're finally doing it. So thank you so much.
We're finally here.
We're finally Just a reminder, obviously, that please only talk about what you're comfortable with. If you feel uncomfortable at any point, need to take a break, need to end. Me and Meru made a safe word. Just say it, let me know. And obviously, any of you that are watching, you lovely people, we're going to be discussing mental health and a range of topics that are sensitive and potentially triggering. So please look after yourself and prioritize your well-being. If you can't watch this episode, then that's totally okay. We can catch you at the next one. Meru, from your Who Am I section, we have egg, also squirrel brain dissociated fun, but in your own words, tell us who you are.
That literally would be what I wrote. Oh my god. My name is Meru. My real name is Isabel, or Isa.
Did I know this? Is this like, I don't think
I don't think you did know this. This
Isabel.
is some Meru lore for you.
Cute.
Bless you. I don't even recognize by my own name anymore. I feel like I'm so used to being called my Twitch name.
Yeah.
That now I like prefer people calling me by my Twitch name, weirdly enough. But I've been a streamer for 4 years now, 4+ years, and also a dog sitter for 4+ years as well. I've struggled with OCD for as long as Shellder around. I only started to really notice OCD around like 8 or 9. I've just been dog sitting and streaming for 4 years. I'm a variety streamer. I play a multitude of RPGs. I love gaming, so
I love that so much. So you were also quite young, but I'm curious to get into that a bit more in detail. Tell us a little bit about your journey as a gaming creator. What has that been like for you? Talk me through it.
My journey as a gaming creator has been definitely harder, obviously, dealing with OCD and other related mental disorders. But my journey as a gaming creator has also been very fun and rewarding and challenging, but in a way that's like everybody learns lessons and grows from it. I started streaming on Twitch just for fun. I was the leader of I told this story yesterday, which is so funny. I never tell this story. I was a leader of a club on an online MMO, and on the iPhone. It was a game on your iPhone called Dragon Raja, and I would schedule and coordinate our like team events. So I would like schedule all of our placements 3 times a week when we did like guild events, and we had a dedicated Discord, and we would VC in there all the time, and I would just play games for my guild, and they would just watch. And then I started streaming on Twitch because I was like, yeah, we could just have like a dedicated space where we do this for fun.
That's so cute.
And I know, and then you just end up like, you raid random people raid you, playing random games, and you just kind of like start meeting people and doing things. And I think it was I took a big year break for my health after a year of streaming, 2 years of streaming. And then when I came back, I decided I wanted to kind of like make it more of a like full-time, try to be part-time, full-time thing for me. And I started to dedicate way more time to it. Now, Twitch is so different from when you first start. I always tell people never put all these expectations and all this stress on yourself in the first year of streaming, because the first year of streaming should be about having fun, finding what you love about streaming, finding what you want to do. And the second you start like jumping into the idea of like, how can I grow my channel? How can I like make this work? How can I grow as a content creator? Okay, start make YouTube videos, start making reels, start like networking. All this stuff becomes like for an anxious, obsessive mind too, all of this stuff is so negative. Like it's not like a healthy atmosphere if you go into it right away with all of these kind of like ideas about it that you think are really positive, but are just going to create more intrusive thoughts in your mind on why you aren't good enough, basically. And that was like the hardest thing about like streaming now versus streaming then, was back then it was like you would just go live for 10 hours with no stress. It was like you could play a game and you just had like your friends there and everyone was watching and they like came in whenever, and it was just so chill and there was no worries, you know, and no stress about like, oh, do I have to make a certain amount of money this month? I have less average viewers than last month. I need to worry about it for like 1,000 different reasons, or just like feeling like all of that ties back to you and your worth.
I like the way that you framed it, of a space without expectation. It was almost like I turn up and I do whatever the hell I want for however the hell I want. Where do you think along your streaming journey that your relationship with Twitch maybe began to change?
I hate to say this, but it starts happening when you allow it to happen, and it's super slow. I can pinpoint the time I struggled the most, and that was during my like transition of wanting to get to partner. Months and months and months, I would end stream, I would cry to my mom. I would have to be looking at my numbers every stream after stream, comparing, trying to see, okay, can we apply this month, or we don't have our 6 or 7. And if we were like so close, I would get so upset. And afterwards, I just kept telling myself that it was gonna get better and I was gonna feel better once we hit partner. And afterwards, I didn't feel better one bit. I didn't feel positive. I didn't feel good. I felt like this weight was not gone. It was just left. Like I had, like, it was in a metaphor sense. It was like I had brought all this like anxiety into my home, and then I just kind of had it, you know? It took me months, years, I'd say, to escape the numbers and looking at the numbers. Now, my streaming career has changed so much. I don't look at my stream stats at all. I don't look at them by month. I don't look at them by stream. I never look at my stream summaries. I have all of it turned off on almost every website. And if I accidentally see it, it turns me into such a spiral. Like I'll see like one stream stat from one stream, and I'll see like the numbers dipped at one point, and I'll obsess. I will literally sit there for hours being like, what could I have done to make it better? Was it that time that I talked about myself too much? Was I too personal in that like 10 minutes and it turned people off? I just realized I have to, in order to, I can't combat this and like nip it in the butt and just be like, no, these are intrusive thoughts. If they're still gonna bug me, then I just need to avoid them until I'm ready to come back to them.
Okay, so the journey has really been you reflecting on your own, what you gain from Twitch, what you see of yourself through Twitch. This idea of, am I oversharing? Is the difference in the number in the stat something to do with the fact that I'm talking about myself? I wonder, you know, how that taps into us in our early experiences. We know that we've all got our inner child. We all know that we've got core beliefs. And I imagine if some of us already maybe be feeling a type of way because we've had experiences in the past, in our childhood, where we felt less than, sometimes the same chord can be struck, even if it's a different thing, which I, you know, can hear. It sounds like there was a real change for you, but you are adapting, you're growing with it. You're like, okay, I'm gonna turn off the numbers, I'm gonna keep engaging with it. I suppose, what do you love about streaming? What is keeping you on the platform?
That's a great question. I feel like it's different every stream. I mean, there were so many times in my stream journey where I wanted to quit and I was sure I was going to. I do have this kind of like connection and attachment to it always. That's like, if I give this up, I always think to myself that I'll just like fall into such a deep, like I won't do anything with my days. What always brings me back is when I actually get on stream and I get to talk to everyone. And it's just like the perfect space and the perfect vibe, and I get to see all my favorite people. And I could never do that or have that with like who I am. I have such an inability to like send text and be on the phone and call people, and stream is like the best way I can catch up with everyone that I know and all the people that I love, and also play games. Like I don't play games really without stream. Stream is the one thing that kind of like keeps me gaming still. because I just have so much anxiety and my ADHD is so bad that actually just sitting down to play a game is like so hard. And streaming is the reason I'll do it.
There's such a theme of connection for you. It's both connection with your friends, your loved ones, the community that you've built, but also through yourself. Like, I love gaming. Gaming makes me happy outside of streaming. I find it hard to connect with that. What a journey you've had, both validating as a previous content creator, but as a woman in the gaming space, to hear such open conversation about actually, yeah, like there are days when I'm on stream, but actually I don't feel like I feel confident. You mentioned earlier obsessive compulsiveness and how that interacts with your streaming and content. When did you start to notice things feeling different for you regarding your mental health?
So for me, I actually felt like I only realized how different I was when I started to hang around people who were normal. So I hate using the word normal. People who didn't have like mental illness on any sort of level that was debilitating in an extent of a daily day, you know? There needs to be a word that describes all that for me.
Neurotypicals.
Neurotypical is the best word.
Yeah.
But I grew up without any friends. I was literally just super happy being by myself and alone for like up until I was like 11, 12. And the only reason I started really making friends was because at that time period, like, it was just like, I don't know, like you were just becoming friends with people in your grade, you know? And I didn't realize how everything I was doing wasn't neurotypical in a sense. Like, I was so in my head all the time, but I wasn't dealing with any sort of intrusive thoughts because there was nothing my brain could really give me like that was that intrusive. I was just so sheltered. So then I started to actually make friendships and have relationships with people, and I started having constant like intrusive thoughts on like a negative level of like everyone I know dying, all my loved ones being killed. I would imagine like them getting stabbed. I would imagine me stabbing them. Like, I would just sit on the couch and stare at a wall. I would get home from school. I would just sit on the couch and stare at a wall for like the entire night until it was time to go to bed. And then bedtime, I would like just pace around my room and fix things for hours until I like passed down on the ground somewhere. My family, unfortunately, I grew up in a family that didn't believe mental health existed. I mean, the only reason I think that my OCD ever had a chance to get better was because my family constantly moved. So when we hit 12 to around when I turned 19, 20, my family was moving constantly. So we would move from like house to apartment to hotel to hotel to apartment to house to house to house. And when I wasn't staying in one place for very long, it was impossible to develop some sort of routine and some sort of pattern. So even though the intrusive thoughts kind of like were still really bad, my OCD kind of like weirdly, it didn't get better, but it did change in a way that was more manageable for me. I went through almost every subsection of OCD. Like, I struggle with really severe OCD, and I've had so many therapists, and I've done so much cognitive behavioral therapy, exposure response prevention therapy, and we've just gotten to the point where, like, even if I'm managing it absolutely perfectly, it's never going to be gone. It's never going to be like, I'm never going to be cured of it in a sense. It's always going to have and try to be fighting its way back in some form of another in my life. Sometimes I feel like if I'm not actively equipped with the tools of handling every subsection of OCD, my OCD could just pop up in another form and I won't notice for months and months until it's like way too late for me to really deal with it, you know?
I mean, starting with OCD... Yeah. No, but like starting with OCD as a young child, I think you worded it really well, that almost like I didn't even have the concepts, the understanding of what was going on to really have intrusive thoughts. But when they did start happening to you, it's like, how does an 8-year-old, 9-year-old, I think you said it was around the same time, like how does an 8 or 9-year-old even respond to, mum, like I'm having thoughts of I don't know, stabbing my best friend at school. And I don't know why. And I want to kind of use this as a point of like, those sorts of thoughts in OCD, they are intrusive. So the way that they feel and manifest is as if someone is throwing them in your head, or an image of yourself doing that, and you're like, oh my god, get this out of my head, what the hell is that? Which makes it so distressing. But as a young Ruru, who then wasn't coming from an environment where mental health was also being spoken about, how did you initially start to cope with that? I know you said, oh my god, sometimes it would just be that I would sit and stare at the wall and I would organize raisins, but what was going on internally for you? Do you remember? Is that a big question? You can take your time.
No, you worded it really well too, because it is this like thing of which at the beginning you don't really know what it is, right? So it was only when I remember finding my first online forum with group for people with OCD. That was just like some random website that looked like it was from 1998. That was just people posting their replies to a message about someone who had OCD. I mean, that was kind of how I had any relief at the beginning, was finding like being able to name it as something like, okay, I probably have OCD, because all I was doing was sitting in my room alone, ruminating, spending hundreds of dollars on my parents' credit card, playing the Smurf game on my phone, trying to avoid literally any aspect of life whatsoever. And I was like that kid that would steal their parents' credit card and buy V-Bucks and play Fortnite. Except I had a severe mental disorder and I was trying to
love
avoid
the Smurfs, Mom. I can't stop.
I love the Smurfs, Mom. This house needed 12 hours to be built, and if I just bought 200 gems, it would have been built right away. So that was the worst part. I was spending it on stuff that like I could have just waited real time for, but I didn't have time. I was just like trying so desperately to avoid the real moment and having all those intrusive thoughts that I was just like putting myself into anything I could that would give me any sort of like enjoyment or take my brain away. And it was only when I started to kind of Google like, hello, this is what's happening to me. Does anyone else turn on the light switch 6 times and zigzag their hand across the bottom of the bed? Like, then I found that forum online, and it was like, at least I had a name for it, you know, because I was just isolating. I was just completely pushing myself away from everyone, thinking I was a total monster and that I was the worst person alive, and that I was having all these thoughts because I wanted to have all these thoughts, right? And the worst part is, the more you combat OCD in like an intrusive state, this took me so long to realize, probably 10 plus years, the more that you say to yourself, no, that's not true, I'm not like that, hey, I just had the intrusive thought, and I don't think that's true, the more and more you're feeding your OCD because you're giving it attention and energy.
I know, I thought you made a really good point about the avoidance, the space between having the thought and then having the feeling, the reaction to it. You know, your little self, your internal processing was like, I need to do everything I can to get short-term relief from the fear that I'm feeling, and that's like the part of the OCD cycle, right? It's the point now where you're bringing it to rumination of like, I'm not a bad person, I don't feel this way, I would never want to hurt, a loved one, or I would never want to do that, why am I thinking that? It's like that rumination of trying to find a solution. And I think it links really beautifully to OCD is something that you're still living with. And I think there is this idea, there's this false narrative that anxiety, OCD, of course, if I had a magic wand, you think I wouldn't try and get rid of my OCD, but what we know about the human existence is that anxiety is an evolutionary thing for us. It helps us survive. And obviously, although OCD isn't necessarily something that we can get rid of, I think it's beautiful that you acknowledge and you're like, this is something that I live with and I live through it. I pass through it like it's turbulence on a plane. You go through the center because there's no stopping. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves with mental health difficulties to be like, I need to get rid of this tomorrow. I'm never going to have anxiety again. I'm never going to feel this way. I think when we meet that with acceptance and we meet that part of us with unconditional regard, where is the space for anger and prolonging that pain?
You said it best. I feel like I meet so many people who aren't ready to take, I feel like most days I'm not ready to take that step where I'm like, I love every part of me.
I love OCD, baby.
I love OCD. But you worded it so beautifully. It is so important to give yourself that unconditional respect and love, or you will never be able to conquer that stuff. It thrives off of being your enemy, you know?
Yeah.
It's so hard to also, though, accept that this is going to be a part of you forever. Like, that is one of the hardest things that I've kind of had to do in my life, to just kind of be like, to watch people move through life so much easier, and to just be like, that will never be me. I have to give up on the idea that even could ever be me. You're mourning a life that you could never have, that you've wanted to have your whole life, in a sense. And it's okay to have a different life, and not every day needs to be not every day is going to be as bad as the worst day, and not every day is going to be as good as the best day.
You talking about your OCD popping up sometimes out of nowhere, or it's been months and you don't actually realize you're in a relapse, is definitely part of it, because when you've been living with something for such a long time, it's so ingrained in your behavioral patterns. So you mentioned ERP, so exposure response prevention. So just to give you guys a little bit of understanding of what ERP is, it's basically the gold standard for OCD. It's a type of cognitive behavioral therapy. It basically centers around exposing you to your worst fear. Let's say you have an OCD fear of contamination, of germs. Your therapist doing ERP might get you to touch a toilet seat in order to expose yourself to the fear of contamination.
Oh,
and that
God.
would be...
ERP therapy is so hard.
Yeah, ERP therapy is really, really challenging when you have OCD, because you are doing exactly what your brain has been protecting you from. I can talk a little bit about my experience with ERP here, and maybe you could share your thoughts on it as well. Very similarly, I had OCD from the age of 8, and again, we're talking about that. How does a little Sheila, how does a little Ruru actually navigate the early feelings of anxiety or OCD when you don't really have the vocabulary for it? Well, I used to say to my mum, my tummy feels weird. And I used to just walk around the house saying that. And my mum is a nurse. So she was like, well, it's obviously something physical at first. So she would bring me to the doctor, and I would get blood tests and tummy scans and this and that. And I would just be like, no, my tummy feels weird. I feel really weird. And it wasn't until I got a little bit older when I wouldn't sit on bus seats unless my mum sat on it first, or I wouldn't touch certain public things where my mum was like, this is really interesting. I was sent to the child's mental health kind of service, and they said, well, we don't know what it is. She's just a sensitive child. And we kind of were sent on the way. Firstly, I also had the very similar kind of like thoughts of intrusive thoughts of harm coming to other people, of, you know, my mum getting hurt, of my, you know, me putting my cat in the microwave, and like really distressing things where I was like, I don't want to do that. But I remember it really hit the fan for me when I got religious OCD, which is a subtype. And very similar to Rue, I've had multiple different types, but relates to ERP. I read a teen magazine, right? I remember I was 13. I wanted to look at pictures of Robert Pattinson, okay? I wanted to see Kirsten Stewart. I wanted to read my horoscope. Give me 10 tips on how I can get a boyfriend at school. I wasn't very popular. Tell me why. I opened to one of the double pages in the magazine, and it was this extensive story about how these teenagers had murdered this other child as part of a satanic ritual. Okay, now in my teen magazine, okay? Now, I came from a very Catholic upbringing. My family are Irish. I remember something, you know, I think the OCD was already there, but something clicked in my brain. And I had this random thought. What if I became a devil worshipper? That was it. That was the thought in my head. Okay? And this is something I actually haven't really spoken about before, so I'm really excited to talk about it. And then started the rumination. And I had such fear of having anything in my head to do with the devil, to do with going to hell, to do with Satan, to do with anything dark or demonic. I thought if I thought those thoughts, it would come true. And we call that thought action fusion, which is where you believe that you think something, so it must be true. It's a really big sign of OCD. And I thought by even merely thinking of the devil, I was somehow going to become a devil worshipper without my control. And again, OCD is a lot about losing control. It's like a doubting thing. It's like, what if I was to lose control? I could do this. Sounds illogical to someone without OCD, but with OCD, when it's paired with the physical feelings of anxiety, it completely becomes real. I kind of spiraled. It started to be that I couldn't look at anything satanic or demonic or hellish. Not that there was much about, but if there was something in a horror film, for example, if there was like something on TV, even if I was to get a thought of the devil, I would have to say a prayer to get out of my head. And it started to be a compulsive thing where pretty much every minute of every day I was trying to not think about this thing, because I thought if I did, I was going to go and do something bad. I ended up moving through that compulsion, but it took me a very, years. That was something that stuck with me. But when I finally went to ERP with it when I was 16, my therapist wanted to rehash it. And so as part of the exposure therapy, she got a whiteboard and she made me write, "I am a devil worshipper," on the whiteboard. Now for me, I was like, I can't write that. I know, it sounds nuts, right? When you just don't have OCD. And I was like to her, I was like, I can't do that. I was like, I can't do that. Her name was Lorna. Shout out to Lorna, saved my life. I said, Lorna, I can't do that. And she was like, you can. Write "I am a devil worshipper" in capital letters. And so I had this whiteboard and I was like streaming with tears, thinking that I'm writing this, so it means it's gonna happen. I am a devil worshipper. She was like, scrub it out and write it again. I'm a devil worshipper. And it was like intense fear. And that was just an example of ERP. It was a long example of my OCD. It was a lot of me writing words or saying things to basically expose myself to the fear, because with exposure comes habituation, which is your body gets used to feeling the anxiety. So when it happens again, your anxiety doesn't spike as much. It's kind of the theory of it. But the ERP worked, and you guys know that I'm super witchy now, and I love horror and I watch a lot of stuff. Do you remember there was a film? It was with Jonah Hill. It was an end of the world film. This is the end, or the end of the world. It had
This is the end.
This is the end. Dude, I went to go and see that when I was like mid religion OCD, and I sat next to my dad and my friend, and there's a scene that comes on where he gets fully possessed, and I, honest to God, in the cinema, like put both my legs up, put my face in my knees, and covered my ears throughout the whole thing. People must have thought I was not well, and I wasn't, because I was like, I'm watching this, and I'm gonna start vomiting blood in a minute and start saying something in satanic dark speech.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so it was great. And now I went through very intensive ERP, and one of my biggest exposures that I did for myself, I have a tattoo of a goat on my arm, because I never used to be able to look at goats. And I got the tattoo. But that was my experience of ERP. I guess long-winded. How did you find ERP? Could you tell me a little bit about your experiences of therapy for OCD, or anything that comes to mind that you think,
I love hearing people's ERP journeys, because it really is one of those things that, like, I had a positive experience and a really negative experience. And I meet a lot of people who have either had a really positive one or a really negative one. I was in ERP therapy not for my OCD actually, but for my ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder.
Mm-hmm.
And I was doing exposures around food, because I will not eat I don't enjoy eating. I won't eat like 90% of food anymore, because I have some sort of association with it that I can't break. I would sit in a room with like an orange, and I would just eat an orange, and she would be like, okay, literally, when we were doing ERP therapy, it was actually during like my winter break, so I was home, but this specific one, and she would be like, okay, now just sit there with all the pulp on your hands for like 5 to 10 to 15 minutes and don't go wash your hands. And I was like, how about we make it 5 seconds? And
I'll drop you a $5 if we can make it like 5.
And it was really good for my ARFID during that time period. Got a lot better. Now when I started getting ERP therapy for OCD, I had a really negative experience, and this was actually my last experience with therapy, and I've been very scared to go back since. I'm now just going back. I know, it's been years. And I used an online service called NoCD. The first therapist I got, I should have like really taken a hard look at and been like, this is not a good therapist, you know? We started ERP therapy almost immediately because that was what NoCD specialized in, like providing you with a therapist who did ERP therapy. And she brought me through, I won't talk about like my therapy because it's still something that I struggle with. What she did was she brought me through like my worst, most darkest intrusive thought. And then like 2 weeks into our therapy, she left the practice. Like she was planning on leaving, she didn't tell me, and she just left the practice. So I was significantly worse. Basically, ERP therapy is gonna make you a lot worse before you get better, chat. And you need to be with I would say to everyone, you need to be with a therapist you really trust, you really feel supported with, that you know is not going to like abandon you at any point in your journey and just leave you high and dry, because your intrusive thoughts are going to get so much worse in ERP therapy before they get better. Because like Shelly said, the afterwards, like of writing all that down on the whiteboard, your anxiety, your tension, it doesn't just like go away, you know? You don't just like the next day feel like, oh, I can just say I'm a devil worshiper now, you know? It's like for the next like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I'm like thinking about what I've done. And I am like actively trying not to soothe myself with all of my different compulsions that are coming up, like to make myself feel better, you know? But it was so bad, like that it took me like 3 to 4 months after this therapy to get myself back just to normal where I was before it.
It's a shock to the system. Is quite disappointing because with something like ERP where, you know, there's types of OCD which we won't even mention today, but there's, you know, things that are so distressing beyond verbalizing it to anyone. It's just something that you would never, and to put your trust into a clinician to then, you know, have that person leave when that's hanging in the air, I can imagine was incredibly distressing for you. It sounds like your ARFID experience with ERP was a little bit more comprehensive.
That time I had a really good therapist, like someone I was meeting with for years who I trusted, you know, like I feel like having that trust between you and your therapist is really important, because there are times when my OCD will start to try to destroy every relationship in my life. And if they aren't solid, I will just like push myself away from people and things because it's like I'll give myself 1,000 intrusive thoughts, and then it's just easier to just either believe that I'm the problem and push them away, or just like avoid it, you know?
In terms of the small values that you did learn through the better type of ERP that you had for your ARFID, what do you feel like you've really taken as a value from that experience?
You know, I had such a good experience with it that I would be I'm very much looking to get back into it. There was so much value there in the experience, because like you said earlier, anxiety's like fear. Anxiety's like this elephant in the room that like if you don't look at, if you just avoid, if you just keep thinking to yourself, it's scary, it's scary, it's scary, it's scary, you're gonna make it scarier. It's gonna be harder to it's going to be harder to face when you finally actually have to face it, because you've told yourself so many times that you couldn't face it. And this girl I met outside of my therapy's office, actually in college, explained to me like this roller coaster theory with anxiety, where like anxiety is like this roller coaster, you know, what goes up has to come down. And when you soothe yourself
with something halfway through the roller coaster, you are teaching yourself that you can only hit that point, and then you're done. Like, you're tapped out. You're like, you're not able to handle anything more than that. And your anxiety will shoot back down to 0. And that's like me whenever I do a compulsion right in the middle of my anxiety, or if I have an intrusive thought and I just like ruminate in it. Then the most important thing is just to let the roller coaster go.
I guess my next question is kind of what you said earlier, which was the obsessive and compulsiveness when you're streaming, when you're a content creator. How does your OCD impact your creative process and consistency?
Oh, that stuff is so hard. I feel like that's the type of thing that you need to be mindful of. Like, if I'm not cognizant of how OCD works and my OCD, there are so many things I feel like I've given up or struggled to do digitally or just like content creation wise due to my OCD. Like, I spend hours longer than I'd like to editing YouTube videos because I will edit out like the smallest little breaths at the end of my sentence. Like, everything needs to be perfect. It's the same with like digital art. Like, I can't do I had to stop making like my emotes and a lot of just digital art because the ability to like undo and redo is so easy that I will spend 5 hours doing a drawing that I end up with like 7 lines, you know, because I'll just like draw a line. I'll be like, nope. I am kind of lucky because on stream, I feel like the way I would describe it is if we were like a restaurant, stream time is when it's like full service, you know, and my brain's on like doing 1,000 different things, and OCD's in the back like, hey, but like anxiety's like, get the ketchup, you know, somebody needs ketchup on 4. And chef. But like afterwards, when I can sit there with myself, I after streams, I tend to just sit there for like 30 minutes and just stare into space. Like, then all my intrusive thoughts come like, oh, maybe I remember that time that like so-and-so sent a message and I didn't respond the way I would have wanted. Maybe I should have said something else. And then I'll spend like literally an hour and a half thinking that person hates me now, and I'll get so deep into like the rumination. And that's really where my OCD lies now. Like, I've beaten out most of like the compulsions. I don't really do compulsions anymore. I don't have this like, I've kind of gotten out of the thought action. Well, no, I haven't gotten out of the thought action fusion, but I have gotten out of like doing something will soothe my anxiety, right? And now I just have like constant intrusive thoughts that are just like, hey, let's psychoanalyze this for 45 minutes because I can.
It really runs into what you were saying earlier about the natural progression of when you're growing on Twitch and you start to analyze every aspect of your performance. You know, you said earlier, oh man, sometimes if there's like a dip in my viewerage, then I'll obsess about what did I do in that space of 3 minutes? Or what did I do in the space of 10 minutes? Did I say the wrong thing? And, you know, there's visual numbers showing progression. There's visual statistics that we can compare ourselves to. What's really lovely is that actually when you are streaming, it sounds like it's a moment for you to completely re-immerse yourself in that theme of connection we were talking about. And that seems to be really impactful for your intrusive thoughts, for your anxiety. It's this is my focus, these are my people, this is my community. Do you find the kind of publication of yourself through like TikToks and, you know, trying to create additional media, how do you feel that interacts with your OCD?
It's hard. OCD for me very quickly leads to burnout. So it's hard for me sometimes I've found I've had to explore different ways of creating content in order to find what works for me. So like I used to edit down like 5-hour VODs that I would record and post on my YouTube channel that would take me like 25-30 hours to edit. But then at the same time, I started making shorts and reels, and I had fun making that at first, but then it started to be about constantly getting stuff out onto platforms. And when I didn't want to do it, I would force myself to do it. And the reels always had to be perfect, and they would end up taking double, triple the amount of time that all of my friends were spending on their reels. And it was becoming so tiresome. So I stopped doing both of those, and I started doing reels that were just quick, easy, fun for me. But the anxiety and the insecurity around that kind of like clouded, and every single time I would go to post something, I would be so in my head for like 3 to 4 hours. I would just be dissociating, walking around my room, pacing, having intrusive thoughts, that I would just be like, you know what, this isn't worth it for me either. I finally just recently got back into making YouTube content, and I'm just making like shorter form content on whatever I want to make it on, and just trying to do it for fun.
Okay.
It's very important to know yourself and to be like, hey, it's okay if other people can do this and I can't. Like, we can find some other way of doing this that works for me, you know? And I think the biggest thing is not giving up. Giving up is not the same as like taking time away from something. You can take years, 5, 10, 15 years away from something, you know? But like having the intention to maybe come back to it at some point when you have a better and healthier relationship with it can be really cathartic, you know? But also letting go of things that you know are just toxic and don't serve you any positive purpose anymore is super important too.
You're really kind of touching in with the accessibility, you know, like this is working, this might work for other people, but this doesn't work for myself. How do I make this more manageable? How do I break this down for myself? Spending 25 to 30 hours a week editing a video is not accessible for me. What is accessible is short form that allows me to still be creative, still have the connection that I get from the other things that I enjoy, and doesn't put a pause to that, which I adore. And I think that's so fantastic, and a real journey that you've gone through in order to recognize what you need and how you navigate the platform as well is a big one.
How do you think your journey with OCD has affected your journey content creating wise?
Oh, back at me. I definitely relate to the perfectionism, but from an obsessive point. It's not just, oh, you know, sadly my numbers weren't as good as they were today. Like, I very much had the, oh my god, you know, before I took the big break that I did, I realized I would, very similar to you, I would go into my analytics, oh my god, this was such a terrible stream. What did I do wrong? Like, what is is it me? Like, is it because I did this? Do I need to change the game? But I love playing this game, but why would I change this game? Because it's gonna, you know, and really falling down that rabbit hole, and then going to my fiance and being like, T, like, what did I do? Like, you were watching the stream. Like, did I seem weird? Like, that reassurance compulsion of like, can you tell me how I can be better and stuff? And he's like, what are you talking about? You're great. Like, it's fine. And not getting satisfaction from the reassurance I'm seeking from others, messaging my mods. Am I doing okay? Like, you know, seeing that for myself was really difficult. I guess understanding very similarly to you that this isn't something that is sustainable in the long term for me, but also with OCD in general, I think our behavior or our thoughts are just much more obsessive in nature. And so a typical person or a neurotypical person would probably have a bad stream, and maybe they would worry about it, and that's totally fine. But then the next day they would be like, oh gosh, okay, I'm gonna restart again. The slate is clean. With OCD, when you're streaming, it feels like you're bringing that page into the next chapter. You're adding pages to the chapter, and it's just getting longer and longer and thicker and thicker. And suddenly you forget why you started and what the original page was about, because now you've got all of these pages that don't make any sense.
You touched on something that like I totally did not touch on, and that was like, after that, I wish I could just move on the next day. That's the biggest thing with OCD that's like a killer, is like, I feel like I'm going through the 7 stages of grief, except it's the 7 stages of OCD, where it's like, okay, day 1, I'm so fucking angry, like I'm so in it. Day 2, okay, I'm so angry that I'm still having these fucking thoughts.
Yeah.
Like, day 3, I hate my OCD, and day 4, I hate myself because I can't fucking get out of it. And it's like, why am I still thinking about this? It doesn't even matter to me.
I actually started like doing ERP on myself after streams, where if I saw like my numbers were shit, I'd be like, I'm a shit streamer. I'm a shit streamer. I would confirm my intrusive thought. That was a terrible stream. Yes. I did something embarrassing. I'm going through the house. I'm doing ERP on myself. I want to very quickly go back to, you said, I turn off my stream. I'm sitting there for half an hour, staring at the wall. How have you created safety for your mental health while streaming?
It takes a lot of time to like kind of figure out and know what's best and what to do. I finish stream within like 4 to 5 hours, because I tend to find too that if I push myself more than that, then I start to get really dissociated. I'll force myself to get off my computer. I won't look at anything stream stats wise, right? Because I just want to kind of like exist with the stream, how it was, how I'm feeling, how it felt then, not give my brain any time to ruminate. I'll go downstairs, I'll just be like, my mom will be like, how was stream? And I'll be like, good. And we'll just kind of like move on. And that's actually the way that I found that is the best for me. Now, then I have like my specific days where I'm on Twitch and I'm on the platform. However, I have Chrome extensions that remove all numbers. It was so important for me now to push through that, because Baldur's Gate I'm playing now, when we first started, I was so anxious about. I switched to Baldur's Gate. I switched to retro games or playing different types of games on my channel around a year ago, because I was going to quit streaming. And I was so tired of having to cater to trends, constantly buy new games that were coming out, liking them but not loving them, and then spending $70 on something my computer could barely run. And I was just tired of streaming, and I wasn't getting the same enjoyment from it that I used to. And so I was like, okay, we're gonna change everything. And change is scary, because it basically means that people who are watching me for like a certain reason are gonna leave. And when I started playing Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I had like a dip. At that point, that was the point I stopped looking at the numbers. That was the point I really needed to make a choice with myself, because I was so in my head after every stream, but I was actually doing something that I wanted to do. So it was like, okay, if one of these two has to go. Like, if I'm not just going to drop this all together, then we need to stop caring about this. And that's when I started to cut things out. And that's when I started to actually focus on creating like a community around what I was doing and what I was playing. What was the original question? I feel like I got off.
No, I want to say, Rue, it really sounds like you have gone back to your very early experiences in Twitch. You've done a full circle. I don't know if you have reflected on that. You started with a community of like-minded people with a similar interest. There was no expectations. There was a sense of just complete fulfillment in that. And then you went through it. Again, we're talking about turbulence. You go through the turbulence because there's no other way around it, and you play the Twitch game. But you've come full circle. You found a crevice in which you can foster that fulfillment again with like-minded people and community. In terms of running your streams, like actually when you go live, do you have any, or like is there kind of certain boundaries or routines that you've created with that when you're actually live to protect your mental health?
Definitely. I mean, it's going to be different day by day. So just depending on how you're feeling, I always feel like it's very important to be upfront with your audience about like what you're going through. Pinning messages like, hey, I'm having a low spoons day. I'm not super chatty. I have like a dissociated meter in the top right of my chat.
Okay.
And my ability to read chat
that's really
is kind of like
really good. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
I love it. I like to have it there because I like to like, I need to let more people know that like, hey, I'm gonna miss, like when that dissociated meter is at like an 11 out of 10, I'm gonna miss like 9 out of 10 messages in chat, you know? And it's not like I'm doing it on purpose. It's just that I'm so out of it and I'm trying to cipher through like 80 ounces of fog in order to kind of like get through that dissociation. For those of you who don't really know dissociation very well, dissociation is kind of, I can't even really describe dissociation very well with dissociation. There's dissociative disorders, and most people go through little bits of dissociation where they kind of feel like they've separated from themselves and they feel far away, and they can feel like their emotions are far, or everything feels kind of far. Or you're looking through like glass or a blender, you're seeing things through a TV screen. But I have a dissociative disorder in which I'm like dissociated 100% of the time, and there's
There's like 1% maybe where I can be present. But because of it, I struggle a lot with some days I just wake up super out of it, you know? And if I'm not honest with my chat and I try to show up with the same energy that I normally have, and I try to read every message and I try to just like be on top of my game, feeling amazing, something's gonna be off, you know? And I'm gonna either burn myself out at the 4-hour mark, 3-hour mark really quickly, or I'm just after stream gonna feel like absolute garbage that I didn't just share with people how I was feeling because I just toughed it out and smiled through it anyway, you know? And I think it's like there's a bunch of things that you kind of have to figure out for you. Like I've gotten rid of all my alerts. For instance, like I've started making them all kind of like simple. I've got some thirst traps in there, you know, for like higher bit numbers.
As you should. Also, Ruru's like emotes are like pop-ups of her on the screen, and they're just so amazing, and I'm obsessed.
That was the way I tried to combat like sounds and things on screen was something really simple. Yeah, the little pop-up wave. Those took so long to make. Oh my god, I can't even remember how to like fully make them now. I had to run it through like
30-hour shift.
Literally another 30-hour shift.
No, I love the dissociative meter. Which I think is important about when we, you know, masking and like trying to show up in a way that's gonna burn us out even more. You said when your OCD is particularly bad, it leads to burnout. So I think it's great that you're like, oh, okay, I'm not having a good spoons day. Let's put a stamp on it so I don't feel like I have to mask or pretend. Dissociation is like, there's different forms. There's derealization, depersonalization. It's not feeling sometimes in your body, feeling like you're looking at yourself from outside of a window, from inside of a bubble. It's a defense mechanism that usually stems from trauma. It's when the brain protects itself from feeling too much. So it makes sense that when you have really heightened anxiety, you can feel quite dissociated, just for definition, if that helps. But I think it's great you have a little dissociative meter, because again, it comes back to accessibility. As someone with mental health difficulties that's like content creating, it's like, no, these are the expectations that I'm setting,
and those expectations are hard. I remember so many times in my streaming career where I would end a stream years ago and I would cry to my mom and I would be like, Mom, I just had no control over my chat. You know, like, Mom, my chat was making really sexual jokes and I just didn't know how to deal with it. Like, there were times when I didn't have a firmer grasp over any part of my Twitch channel, and it was a lot harder for me to feel good after streams, or to feel like, okay, what to come back to streams and want to stream again without having some sort of like rules in place that I could like monitor and set, you know? And I feel like it's been years since that, but every streamer is different, right? Like I see so many streamers who have like 1,000 Tangia pop-ups, like 1,000 little
I was definitely one of them.
And I love watching those streams. I could never be that streamer. Every single time I get like a pop-up on stream, the startle dissociates me, and I can't deal with like any sort of overwhelm dissociates me. I have to know that about myself and know that I just have to like take all that. But it took me so long to even see that, you know? I was just overwhelmed on stream. I felt overwhelmed. And every single stream, I would just feel overwhelmed, and I'd be like, what's overwhelming me? What can I do? What can I do? And I just wouldn't be able to figure it out. And it's like removing little things, trials and tests, where you're like, okay, today I'm gonna like stream without this, or today I'm gonna stream without this, and having to know that maybe your audience won't like it if you take some part away, you know, like. All that stuff, you have to be okay with kind of like moving through it as like a fluid thing that's like, you're not going to tie back to your self-worth in any way, shape, or form, you know?
I know from your rules, actually. You have assertive rules about your space, which I think is really important. And again, it's not for everyone. Everyone runs their streams differently. I had 300 Astarian thirst traps on my stream. You could spam them till the cows come home. If I was in a deep, I don't know, scene in Cyberpunk and someone's dying, you best believe I'm about to see Astarian boobs on the street. Like, you know what I mean? But the rules and assertiveness that you've had with your community really cultivates this safety for yourself when you're not feeling so safe within yourself. What do you think you wish more people understood about being a creator with mental health challenges?
I wish more people, I was just talking about this with someone the other day, I wish more people understood that, like, some days you can show up with a smile because you kind of feel like you have to, you know? But that doesn't necessarily mean everything is, like, better or okay. It's one of the hardest things to kind of, like, come onto stream and be like, my dissociation is better today, but it probably isn't going to be very good next week, you know? And having to kind of, like, share those, like, high moments, kind of being like, you know, I don't want to be like, don't get your hopes up that they'll stay high, because, like, I even hate thinking that way myself, you know? But this, like, sometimes it feels like I have to, if I have a moment where I'm in, like, a good mood and I'm feeling positive, it's so hard to kind of counter this idea that, like, oh, I should just continue masking this energy because other people are, like, feeling really good that I feel this way, you know? So if I have, like, if I'm feeling good and everyone's like, oh, I'm so happy, you feel so good, and then the next day I feel bad, I will literally feel bad coming to stream the next stream in, like, a bad mood. I'll be like, hey, sorry guys, sorry we had that really good day and everyone was so happy for me now, man. I wish I felt good today. It's one of those things that's hard, and I wish that there was a space that, I mean, this is a great space for it, but mental health in general, I feel like, is one of those things that is hard for a lot of people to understand and needs, like, a lot of long-term grace that is hard to get, you know? What about you? What do you think?
When I was, like, doing more regular streams, I would constantly be like, guys, today I'm having an OCD day, because I think it's so easy to fall into the trap of becoming another version of yourself when you're streaming and having to keep that up. And there is such empowerment in realizing you can be completely yourself. You don't have to be a better version of yourself or a different aspect of yourself. No, like, you can be all of your colors every stream, and that's okay. It's having more space to discuss the impact of mental health when you're still creating, and how that changes your consistency, and that it's okay. I wish that maybe there's more conversations that it was okay for your consistency to be affected. And there is this idea of, if I'm not online, I'm missing out, and that is a really toxic thing that can be an entry requirement when people get into content creating. I have to be in all of my friends' streams, and if I'm not, I'm a bad friend. And if I'm not streaming, I still have to be on Twitch because I still have to be networking, or I still have to have a presence so that people know that I'm here. It's like you're never offline.
It is so hard not to feel what you said is the hardest thing about being a streamer on this platform. If you are on this platform for, like, a year plus, you will know that feeling of, I have friends now, I want to support my friends, I want to be there for my friends, I can't be there for my friends, I need to be on this platform 24/7, I can't do it, I feel like I'm streaming during all of my friends' times, I feel like I'm stealing viewers, I feel like I'm, like, it slowly becomes all of this that's, like, it doesn't need to be. I've, like, completely stopped. Like, I have days where I'm on Twitch and I hang out with people, and then there are days when I totally avoid the platform, and I think that's the way it kind of has to be in order to not be on it 24/7. Because if I go on Twitch in the morning and I see, like, oh, my friend Alone is on, oh, my friend Apothic is on, then by the time they're, like, 3 hours into the stream, another friend will be on that I'll see, and another friend will be on that I'll see, and then it's 8 p.m. I've hung out with, like, 30 people, I've had a great day, but I've got nothing done. Man, it can't be every day. I gotta like
have a
Yeah.
life, go work out, you know?
Yeah, especially when you have mental health, I think that's where the difficulty comes in, because it's like, if I'm not doing the things that I know keep me on track, or my routine that I know keeps me sane, it's easy when you're feeling good to be like, I'm gonna just throw it all out the window and I'm gonna spend all my day and it's gonna be great and I'm gonna sit in my PC all day. And then you do that for 4 days in a row and you're like, why is my OCD bad? Oh yeah, because I haven't kept my routine. Wow. I mean, what an amazing, I feel I've learned so much about you. Despite your difficulties with OCD, what has really grown and bloomed for you?
You know, I think the hardest thing I used to have problems with was my relationships. I really struggled with IRL relationships with my OCD. I will dissect every little thing that someone does. I have so many subsections of OCD that are very reliant on fear as well. So anything that I fear, my OCD will throw full force. And I have so many fears around people and around trust. But online relationships, I think, is the one thing that I've thrived with the most, that I've been able to kind of like beat out my OCD with, because if I can't find if I can't have the best relationships with people that have all the same hobbies, all the same interests, or basically like carbon copies of me in different forms with different stories and different adventures and life that they've went on, then like, what the fuck am I gonna get? You know, like, this is perfect. This is everything and more. My OCD can't convince me that it isn't. It'll try, but it really is the best.
So like confidence, social confidence, it must feel so fulfilling for you. It's genuinely inspiring, starting from someone who was, in your own words, maybe seeking connection and wasn't really finding it with the people around you when you were little Ruru, you know, falling into a small community, getting into Twitch, going through the hedge, so to speak, of thorns, and coming out the other side to find that connection again. I mean, if you could speak to a version of yourself just starting out with content creation, that little Ruru who during COVID was like, I want to connect, what would you say to them now?
Oh, that's a good question. I honestly don't know. Like, keep on at it, girly. Don't let all the little things boggle you down. It's so hard because I really think that little Ruru, I'm not someone who has regrets necessarily. I think that everything that you go through, every lesson that you learn, every experience that you have is literally why you can have the thoughts that you have today. So I feel like little Meru had to go through everything in order to get to the point that I am at now. Would I have loved if she had gotten there earlier and I hadn't been hating myself for so long and struggling for so many years? Yes. But would any advice I give myself ever stop me from getting to that point? Probably not.
I love that.
Times, you know?
You're like, I had to go through all of the rubbish to actually get to where I am. That's so
yeah, and
sweet.
I see. What about you?
What would I say? I very much have the same mentality. I think we're quite similar. I think I'm quite a spiritual person anyways. I did my 2-year stint on Twitch and I absolutely loved most of it, you know, almost all of it, and developed real impactful connections. I wouldn't even say, do you know what? I wouldn't even tell her to do anything differently. I would say to her, just fucking go with it. Just go with it. Because I think you always end up where you're meant to be, and I wonder where I would be if I hadn't have done that. I'm here now. I mean, speaking to you about something that I've always wanted to do, using the platform where we met, you know, it's really symbolic. So I don't think I would change anything. Ruru, thank you so much for speaking to me today, for being not only the pilot episode, but for being vulnerable and open. You have just been amazing today. Thank you so much for trusting me with your story. I have really been impacted by our conversation. I want you to know that, and I'm going to walk away thinking about this.
I am honored to be part of the first episode. Thank you so much for including me. Thank you so much for asking me this. Thank you for allowing me the space too to talk about mental health. This is so rare, and this is just the perfect space to do it. And there is no one I would rather talk about it with. And I am also going to be thinking about this for many days to come.
Thank you. Oh my god, I'm emotional almost. I'm like, oh, it's so kind. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you. Bye.